Well, good day, my friends. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion, and today we're coming to you from just outside of Cincinnati, but we're actually doing a little bit of old Hollywood today. There's a woman who wanted to be a successful actress and instead is probably most well known for solidifying herself in Hollywood history as being the woman who jumped off the Hollywood sign to her death. Daze with Jordan the Lion and you all begins right now. We're looking for section 12. That's where we'll find Millicent Entwistle and her father, but we know her in history as Peg Entwistle. So here's section 12. I've always been kind of surprised that she was buried out here, because she was born in London, and yeah, you would just kind of think that either she would have ended up in Hollywood or in her home country, but I believe her father was from out here. I'm sorry I had to kick all these geese out of here, or whatever they are. Actually, I didn't, but they were all lingering right here by her grave. So if you come here and you look for one that says Ross, she is actually buried on the opposite side, right here. Father Robert Entwistle, daughter Millicent, also known as Peg, as you can see right there. That was a name she gave herself actually when she was 13. She had went and saw a play and it had Peg in the title of it, and she was inspired to go by Peg from then on. Now, like I said, she was born in London, and it's surprising that she would be buried out here, but her father was married in London, and that's where she was born, of course, and pretty much immediately after she was born, her father and mother got a divorce. And so at the age of 5, her father brought her over to the United States to New York because he got remarried. And then they had 2 young kids, and Peg was actually, like, she got along with her stepmother and everything, but it was unfortunate because in 1921, unfortunately, her stepmother got bacterial meningitis and ended up dying. And then just the following year later, 1922, her father would be hit on Park Avenue in a hit and run, hit by a car, and he would end up in the hospital for several days before he ended up passing away. So Peg and her 2 siblings, which would have been her step siblings, ended up going out to Los Angeles and living with their uncle Charles Entwistle. And Charles was in theater. See, her father was actually somewhat of an actor, off and on actor. So it was kind of like, you know, she had the bug a little bit in her. And then with having an uncle who was running a theater, he ended up putting her into boarding school there, and eventually she ended up getting an opportunity to audition for the Boston Repertory Theater, and she was accepted. So she would move to Boston and would get bit parts. They would make her a maid in the first thing that she was in, and she would do several other plays, but it was when she did a play called The Wild Duck, there was someone in attendance who was inspired by her performance and looked up at her mother and said, "Mom, I want to be just like Peg Entwistle when I grow up." And that woman turned out to be Betty Davis, world famous Betty Davis. Now eventually New York came calling. They wanted her to come to New York, be in plays, and you know, of course, everyone's dream is to end up on Broadway. This ended up being maybe one of probably the downsides to her life, because this kind of sent a spiral eventually. Even though she was a good performer, She ended up falling in love with a man named Robert Keith, and Robert Keith was also involved in the theater. He was also an actor, but he had a bad reputation for being abusive, for also owing a lot of people money, for being a drunkard. And when she met him, he was cleaned up, he was trying to not drink, and they ended up falling in love, getting married, and then within a year, she became pregnant. But because of wanting to be an actress and his instability, she decided not to have the baby. And apparently this sent him into a spiral where he started to drink a lot, and she actually had no idea that he was once married. So he had actually been, because of his behavior, because he was out getting drunk and he owed so many people all over town, he had kind of been blacklisted. So he was drinking all the money that she was earning, and one night while they were out to dinner, a police detective came up and threatened to arrest him because he owed $1,000 in alimony. And this is when Peg found out that he had been married before, and also found out that he had a child. His child's name was Brian, and Brian would eventually become Brian Keith of A Family Affair. So Peg eventually decided to leave. She decided to leave Robert Keith because he was abusive. Apparently she had claimed that he grabbed her by the hair in a hotel and dragged her through the hotel. So she filed for divorce, claimed cruelty, and then when it was granted, she actually owed money, and so she had to forfeit all of her belongings, her clothes and everything. And she decided in 1929, once that divorce was finalized, that she was going to try her hand at Hollywood. And so she moved out to Hollywood, and again moved in with her uncle, aunt and uncle, and started auditioning. And she was doing plays, and she realized that maybe being married to Robert had really hurt her career, and that because he was blacklisted, they had blacklisted her too, because she just couldn't get any meaningful roles according to her. But she ended up basically making an agreement with a Broadway director to do his play. And apparently she reneged on it when she got an offer from RKO for a contract, and she decided to sign that contract. Now, they put her in a movie which you would think would have boosted her career, because it was David O. Selznick production, it was starring Myrna Loy, but it was called The 13 Women. But unfortunately, the storyline was that Myrna Loy played like a woman who was trying to coax people into doing things for her. So she portrayed herself as an astrologer, and she would basically make her friends believe that other people around them were bad and would get them to kill them. And apparently there was something back then, a code. They deemed it to be, you know, what they thought had lesbian undertones. And so she had a pretty meaty part in here. She kills her husband in the movie and everything, and she was in 18 minutes of the movie. But because of this code that they had to abide by, they ended up editing it down to under an hour-long movie and cut out most of her parts, leaving it to just a couple of minutes. And then after this, because she had moved out there in 1929, the stock market had crashed, the Great Depression started. You know, this was 1930 and 1931 when she was doing these parts. Unfortunately, RKO was running out of money and had to cancel her contract. And that's when she did the drastic move that we've all heard about, and that is known in Hollywood history, of climbing those 150-foot ladders. So the trade sheets had published that her contract had been canceled, and she fell into a depression pretty much right away, it sounds like. 2 days after that was published and announced that she had lost her contract, she told her uncle, who she was living with on Beechwood Canyon, if you want to see that house and basically where she would have walked up to, I did do a vlog on that, if you look up The Woman Who Jumped from the Hollywood Sign. So Peg told her uncle that she was going out to meet up with some friends at a nearby drugstore, and she never went. What she did end up doing, we would find out, is She walked all the way up to the Hollywood sign. She was living in Hollywood when they were building it, so she would have actually seen that being built. I don't know if she saw it as an easy ending, or, you know, as far as if you jump, it will pretty much ensure death, or if it was, you know, a Hollywood ending, you know, it just, but she was feeling lost and without anything coming her way. It was actually said that she was up for a movie with John Barrymore and that she had lost it to Katharine Hepburn, and that may have been actually the last straw. But she walked all the way up to the Hollywood sign, used a ladder that they used for repairs, and basically like a utility ladder that was up there, and climbed to the top and eventually jumped off. The next day, a hiker would actually see her body laying down below while they were hiking, and they actually found her clothes. She had taken her jacket and some things off and neatly folded them at the bottom of the sign. And inside her purse, there was a note, and because it was signed P.E., her uncle realized with her not coming home that it was very likely her, and with what she was going through, and so he went and claimed her body. But the note said, "I am afraid, I am a coward, I'm sorry for everything. If I had done this a long time ago, it would save a lot of pain." Now there's also a story attached to this saying that a day after she did this, a letter came in the mail saying they were offering her a part, playing a woman who would take their own life, you know, not the same way that she did, but would end her life in the same manner. So you never know what would happen. She was only 24 years old. She'd had a bad marriage under her belt, kind of a tumultuous home life because of parents dying, and you know, who knows what would have been right around the corner. Millicent Entwistle, who went by Peg, her body was cremated and she was buried here with her father. Now it doesn't say that his father's wife is here, but I believe that I read that she was here and that they were actually buried together because he died right around Christmas. So they buried him right around that time with Loretta. So I think he had Loretta's ashes with him, and then when he passed away so shortly thereafter, he was buried here with her, and then eventually his daughter Peg. Rest in peace, Peg Entwistle. A sad way to go. That's Hollywood for you, folks. Thank you all for watching. We're gonna call it a day. Have a great night, and goodbye.